start.
Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and this is a program coming to you from Woodstock, New York, and it's called Let's Live with Thurman Greco. And we have the most exciting guest tonight. I've been doing this show for 20 years, and I have to tell you, it is so exciting that I have been breaking all of my rules. He and I have been talking. I never talk to a guest before the show starts. There's all kinds of things I never do, and I've done them all this evening because I am so excited. And I'm really excited about Eric Siegel's book. And it's called Ramble On, It's the Life of a Stoner. This is so great because this is what we live, you know? And it's real, it's a memoir. And it's also his second book. So we're going to get to talk about the difference between writing your first book and writing your second book. But I want to start off. Can we name your first book?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Tell us what your first book is called.
My first book is called Selling the 90s. And that's all about the 90s, but it's about selling all the hot products pre-internet. At flea markets, at street fairs, at festivals, in a store, and where all those items are today. Like it was about Pokemon, it was about Magic the Gathering, Beanie Babies, baseball cards, comic books, and almost all of those items that were worth a lot of money back then that people were going crazy to get. Almost all of those items held today their value or even more, which is hard to believe. But that is what that book is about, and how the advent of the internet and internet commerce made it very difficult for small retailers to keep their business going unless they jumped onto the internet.
So now, this evening, we have the embarking of the second book, which is a very, very adult book because it's about being a stoner. And it's a memoir, so the chapters are real. And there are pieces of the first book that could fit into this, but they did not because he focused on the one thing. So this is a very, very interesting book. And I want to start off by telling you that I love the cover. Please tell me about the cover.
Well, it might be looked upon as cheesy, a bunch of pot leaves on the cover, but it kind of says it all. And a young person did this cover, went to school at SUNY Purchase to do this sort of thing. And he also did the cover of my first book, which I'm happy with both. I do like the covers of both. Front and back, there's a couple pictures on the back. On the little caption. Hudson Valley Organic Press is our little company that we publish our own books with. This is the second book we published. And hopefully there might be more. And of course, nice marijuana buzz on the back, which is now perfectly legal in New York. At the time this book was concluded, marijuana was yet to be legal in New York. It was only a few weeks away.
Wow.
And then the book was published, and then 2 weeks later or so, the marijuana is legal. And then on the back is the USS Forrestal, which is an aircraft carrier in the Navy that I lived on for 3 years. And this book discusses a little bit about life on an aircraft carrier.
So there's some interesting things there. I would also like to say, how did this book get its start? What made you think of doing this book, of writing this book?
Well, at the age of 40, I had to go out and get a job for the first time in my life because the internet really put me out of business. I wasn't adaptable enough to jump onto the internet early enough because things were going well for me. I was selling stuff at flea markets. I was selling stuff at street fairs. I had a little store, and everything was good. And I saw the advent of the internet, and I'm like, I don't need it. And I was stoned, I was happy, life was good, everything was cool. I didn't want to deal with the internet or anything. And then I knew it was coming, so I avoided it, and it wound up putting me out of business. So for the first time in my life, I was 40 years old, and I'm like, what am I going to do? So I became a bartender, which is kind of late to start life I need to start a career at 40 as a bartender, but it worked out well, and I was a bartender for 17 years. In the time I was a bartender, I would talk to people and tell them my little stories and stuff, and people were telling me, you should write a book, you should write a book. So I did.
So already I know there's a third book. Because being a bartender, how many books are there out there about bartenders?
Maybe more than you would think. Because there's these people who consider themselves celebrity bartenders, and they wrote books. And like people who are in famous restaurants in New York City, and they also teach bartending, and it became a pretty good thing. But it's pretty simple, really. You just gotta take care of the people and make drinks quick.
Yeah, but that's not, being a celebrity bartender, you were not a celebrity bartender.
No.
You were an in-the-life, real-life bartender. And so...
Well, this book does cover a bit of that at the end. The last chapter is called Work Sucks. This book is 5 self-contained chapters in chronological order. So any of these chapters could just be read one chapter and you're fine. But they're self-contained chapters, but they go in chronological order. The last chapter goes into the jobs I had to have after being self-employed for so long. So there's quite a bit about the reality of bartending in here, which is not a bad thing.
What is being a bartender? What are a couple of things that you really learned? Did you learn anything as a bartender that you never thought you would?
Well, I learned that sometimes you have to take care of tables and stuff as well. And the most important thing is make sure people have water. That's the most important thing I learned. If people have water and they have their drinks, they'll be happy.
Really?
Yep. Like people, you gotta be fast. And then once people have their thing, they don't care if the food takes a long time. They don't care as long as they got their drinks. And a lot of restaurants don't realize that. But if people got their water and they have their drinks and maybe some bread, they can sit there for hours. Then you can, because, well, I can't go into particular details of places that I've worked because some of it has been in this book, and a lot of reality, true stories, back of the house things that come out that people would never realize what had happened. I worked at a cooking school for 12 years as a bartender. 12 of the 18 or 17 years I was a bartender, I worked in one place. And a lot of that is in here. Now, it's a cooking school in New York. And it's very dramatic what goes on. It's very well worth reading. I can't say more than that. But all the names have been changed in this book to protect the guilty, except for mine.
Really?
I should have changed my name in this book too, but it's too late.
But you did, they're all pseudonyms.
Yeah, because it's all, this book is, even though it is a memoir of the life of a stoner, keeping to that subject, it is kind of a fictitious story so that no one gets hurt and everything, and but it's all true.
So what you're saying is you gave pseudonyms because if you had given real names, there would be people getting knocked off and hit, killed, whatever. The stories were terrible, huh?
Well, not as bad as that, but I don't want to hurt anyone, and I wanted to put out what really happened right across the board in every instance. So the first chapter in here is called Growing Up Stoned, and I started smoking pot at a very young age. Not as young as my friend who started at the age of 7. We're the same age. He was brought to Woodstock Festival in 1969 with his older siblings, and inevitably got turned onto marijuana, and then he came home and corrupted us all. Or tried to, but it was many years later until I got corrupted into that whole thing. And one thing about the now legal in New York State marijuana, which is a beautiful thing, but marijuana, like alcohol or anything could be abused. You gotta really, I'm not a preacher, but it's not all good.
Everything in moderation.
Yep, except for moderation. Just kidding.
So you were in New York City for 12 years. a bartender in a cooking school.
Yes.
And it was wild.
Well, it was very good, and
But then here, you were also on this aircraft carrier.
well, that is a different story because
That's a different chapter.
Different chapter. Like, the first chapter is called Growing Up Stoned, so it's a little background. It might start off a little slow. Sometimes they say when you write a book, you're supposed to hook people and everything. But I needed to go to the background. I needed to tell where, like, when I was 6 years old, I was taking a subway on my own, one subway stop, because my parents were both worked. And I had to make it to my grandpa and grandpa's luncheonette in the Bronx, where I'm actually from. It was just one stop on the subway, but a 6-year-old kid, I mean, that was a scary thing. So it starts off like that, and it tells, it gives you a little background. And then the second chapter is called Missing Ships Movement, and that's about a particular chapter of the 4 years I was in the Navy. It kind of goes into one Mediterranean cruise, which is considered a deployment. All it is we went from Jacksonville, Florida in our aircraft carrier throughout the Middle East and Europe, stopping at many ports, kind of policing the area. Although I was ignorant, and all of us were ignorant of what was really going on. We were there, like, I was a sailor, I was 18 years old, we were there for the party. We wanted to hit foreign countries and have a good time. We didn't know really, it wasn't like, the focus wasn't on like, oh, we're in the military and we're policing the world. We were just a bunch of sailors, just looking for a good time. Young guys, like, I wasn't ready to go to college when I was 18, so I went to talk to the Navy, the military recruiters. I really wanted to be in the Army, is what I really wanted to do. Since I was a little kid, I wanted to be an Army person. And add marijuana, it changed my course. It sent me to the Navy instead of the Army. So in some ways, marijuana might have saved me, because I no longer wanted to be having a gun and doing that type of thing, but I wanted the adventure. So the Navy seemed more appealing to me. And that's what I did. I joined the Navy 3 days after graduating high school. I was in Navy boot camp.
Now, did the Navy recruiter approach you, or did you go to the Navy?
No, I went to the recruiting office. I talked to the Army guy.
You walked in the door?
I walked in the door. I was 17. I talked to the Army guy first, and the Army guy's like, I was like, I want to be a paratrooper, I said. And he's like, okay. And I went and I took the test, the ASVAB test, Armed Forces Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, which is a very, very long test.
Yeah.
It's like a 4-hour, 5-hour thing. So I took the test. I got the
What
results
did it tell
back.
you? Well, yeah, what were the results?
My results were pretty high. Like, I did pretty good. I don't think you have to be that smart to do that good in that, but not in every area. Like mechanical stuff, I'm not good in math. I know that, but in most of the things, I had scored a very. So the recruiter was trying to talk me out of becoming like a paratrooper and an infantryman. He's like, "Oh, you could have like a real job in the Army. You can succeed, and you can be whatever you want to be. You can be like an aircraft mechanic, or." And I was like, "I don't want to do any of that stuff. I don't want to get a job. I want to, I'd rather like march, and train, and exercise, and not." So he wasn't really into it. So I went home, and my parents were like, "Well, why don't you talk to the other recruiters?" I walk into the Marine Corps recruiter, and I'm like, "How you doing?" He's like, "Do you want to kill for God and country?" And I was like, "See you later." Sorry. Then I went into the Navy recruiter, and he's like, "Do you like drinking beer and chasing women?" I was like, And I wound up joining the Navy.
Did you ever make it as far as the Coast Guard?
The
recruiters.
That was a mistake I made. I didn't. There was Coast Guard literature there, but there was not a dedicated Coast Guard recruiter. I talked to the Air Force, but there was no way you have to be an officer, you have to go to college and all that to become a pilot. So nothing else. I didn't want to work on stuff. I didn't really like the Navy. It just seemed like, yeah, go on a ship.
I've always felt that as far as the military is concerned, the biggest secret on the planet is the United States Coast Guard. And nobody even knows. That's why it's a big secret, because nobody even knows about it. It's the best gig there is.
I have to agree. We had in boot camp, there was Coast Guard people in Navy boot camp with us.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, the Coast Guard, that sounds nice. We should stay on the coast. Maybe you're in Key West or something.
Right.
That's not too bad. Because like living on a ship out at sea for a long time, it's adventurous, but it's a very hardship.
Yeah.
Hardship.
And the Coast Guard has these gorgeous posts that are this like Key West, they're lovely, and they're East Coast and West Coast, and they're beautiful. And you don't even, of course, now I think you do carry arms, but
probably.
when you were doing it, they didn't even carry sidearms,
I believe it. I do.
I mean, it was just a really, really, and there were no ugly places. Oh my God, the Army has some real pit places.
I know, I was lucky I didn't wind up in the Army.
Yeah, you are.
But I think that's why, like the marijuana. And one other thing it changes your life. It does, and maybe not for the best, because you start smoking marijuana, and you like, if some people you can really keep it to like, oh, I'll do it every now and then. Like some people drink every now and then, but most people can get hooked pretty easily. And it's like drinking is a little more harsh, because you drink a lot, and you smoke a lot, you're mellow, you're going to fall asleep, But another thing I found out about marijuana is that it really helps for, like, I would smoke a little bit of pot, and then I want to clean my apartment. I just want to clean.
Really?
Yes. That's. I want to. I'm like when I had my store and everything, or I go to doing the street fairs in the '90s, and I was like, actually then I did, because I was on Dead Tour for a while. That's how I started my business. And the first book goes into this. This book also goes into the Grateful Dead Tour, but in a different way. So the books do not repeat itself. That's more PG. This is more R-rated. So, because like on Dead Tour, I didn't want to go into any of the hard stuff, but that's how I kind of started off on my business. And believe it or not, I had dreadlocks back in the 80s. And a lot of people, even in Woodstock, who I knew from Dead Tour, they don't recognize me.
That's great.
Because I was gone for many, many, many years. But Dead Tour is where I kind of started having a business, working for Not Fade Away originally, and then going into business for myself, and then finding flea markets and street fairs and all that type of thing. And then that book goes on, and it was a great run. Grateful Dead Tour was like a very interesting place, very unique. In the form of Dead and Company, they're still touring to this day. It's a little different, but
they are still touring. So
sonic.
when you write about the Grateful Dead, then people who like the Grateful Dead, they can see kind of like a history of what they see now. They can see the before time.
This is like the Grateful Dead was going on before my time. Like I was a little kid when the Dead were already touring, and I mean I was aware of them always because of my friend Bobby, who went to Woodstock, and his older brothers, and they turned us on to Grateful Dead and all that. And I had the opportunity to sell on Grateful Dead Tour T-shirts, which is an awesome thing. So it's kind of just my perspective of what I saw. This whole book is kind of from my perspective, but it's really about the people that I ran into, the interesting characters all along the way, like that you would only find in Dead Tour. Or then many years later, I run into them here in Woodstock. There's like a lot. It's really about the other people. It's my perspective through my lens, but it's not about me. Like it's just like what I see and what I did, and a lot of people can relate to it. It's very relatable, because like one thing that I do go into in this book about marijuana is that, well, now it's legal, so it's a different story, even though there's not dispensaries in stores yet, soon to come. Marijuana for the last, 10 years or so, it's so easy to get. But when I was young, it was hard to get. And we wanted it, and it wasn't as good. Today, the marijuana is unbelievable. Back then, it was like what we would call swag. You would put it on a record album and shake it around, and a million seeds would roll off of it before you could roll.
So it wasn't very good quality.
No, it wasn't really. It was okay because it was what was around pretty much. It was what we were able to get. But also, to try to find the marijuana back then, we had to go into housing projects and street corners in the ghettos, and like it was hard to get. It wasn't around all the time, and you couldn't get in trouble. You got caught with marijuana back then. You'd go to like juvenile detention center for 6 months. Like it was against the law. It was.
Well, and there was a time there, I guess in the late 60s, when Reagan was really taking everybody that he could find and locking them up as far back as he could.
Yeah.
And the prisons in Mexico were jammed with Americans,
Yep.
many of whom really didn't even realize quite what they were doing there.
Yeah, and the bottom line is pot is not really that bad. Like it's milder than alcohol. I mean, smoking is not good for you no matter what you do, breathing smoke into your lungs. But you can make like edibles out of marijuana and ingest them. Like they have candies and cookies and brownies and, you know, gummies.
Are people taking those
lollipops.
seeds and planting the stuff now?
You're allowed to. But the thing is, the marijuana you get today doesn't have very many seeds in it. It's because they know how to grow it, so it's like only a female plant. I don't know much about growing. I don't. But yeah, very, very, very rarely do you find a seed. But there's places to get seeds, and you can start growing. But it's not easy. You're going to have to, you know. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean, you throw a seed in the ground, it's going to grow, but you have to know how to prune it and how to dry it and prepare it. It's a process. And marijuana now being legal, there's going to be different. I already looked into all the different licensing that's going to be out there.
Yeah.
There's going to be like a license for growers. There's going to be a license for transporters. There's going to be a license for retailers. It's all going to be, you know, very clear cut and everything licensed. New York State is charging 13% tax on everything. 4% of the tax is going to go to Ulster County and 9% goes to the state. And personally, I would love to see a marijuana store in Woodstock, which I'm sure there will be, which I wrote in this book, hoping that there will be, just because it's kind of cool for me. Marijuana at one point being so, like, during the Reagan years when he was president, as you said, when he was president, it was rough too.
Oh.
It was rough. He was like war on drugs, and there's a little bit in the book about he was spraying the marijuana fields with paraquat, a poison,
Yeah.
in Mexico, like spraying their fields.
Yeah.
So it kind of set things back a bit, and and like anything else, like alcohol, you have to be responsible, and you know, you got to be smart, and that's it. Like anything else, like, there's a lot of things out there that are not good, and I'm not. Like I think maybe I don't know how different my life would be if I didn't smoke marijuana, but it definitely changed my life, and I'm thinking for the better. Is what I'm thinking, because I'm a more peaceful person.
Well, and you're happy with your life.
Very happy.
So that's a good thing.
And you know,
because I know that when I think about Reagan, of course he was not one of my popular presidents, but when I think about him and I think about all that he did, my God, they had those airplanes along the border of Texas. Oh my God, these poor people. You know, every president or whatever, every few presidents, they focus on the Rio Grande River, or they focus on the northern Mexico or southern Texas and New Mexico and Arizona people, and you are at mercy for whatever idiocy they can come up with. And they brought, I can remember they brought border patrolmen down from Canada who were clueless, totally clueless. So where were you were you in New York City at the time? Where were you when all that happened?
What years was this?
This was the late 60s.
Oh, the late 60s. I was like pretty young. I was like a kid. I was living in the Bronx. I remember the hippies, and I wrote a bit about that in the book. I remember seeing the hippies. I thought they were cool. My mom didn't. And I was like, oh, cool. And yeah, I was like the late 60s. I was like 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, so
Yeah,
that was
like-
before you were, well, actually that's pretty good because you missed it.
Yeah,
'Cause you
yeah, because
didn't get in
69, yeah, the Woodstock Festival, my friend who was born on the same day as me, same year, he was in Woodstock and experienced that with his older siblings, and he was like, wound up becoming my best friend. Because when I grew up like in the 70s, like in the 70s.
So if he was your best
school.
friend and he went to the Woodstock Food Festival and they turned him on to this, how did he finally turn out?
Not great.
Not great.
No, he liked to he liked to like steal cars and do stuff like that. And yeah, he didn't turn out all that. He was the youngest of a big family, and yeah, he just like he smoked. And everybody used to give him sips of their beers all the time. Like since he was a little kid, he was drinking beers all the time.
By the time they had him, they weren't raising him anymore.
Yeah,
He just kind of ran loose. Yeah.
He kind of, and
I know people like that.
So we had a couple of. I wound up like kind of. Like we were born on the same day, same year, same height, same weight. We each had a Rolling Stones tattoo, and we were destined to be friends. Even though I was like really into sports when I was younger, but since I was a marijuana smoker, I wasn't part of the clique, And since I played sports, I wasn't part of the marijuana smokers clique. So I was kind of like an outcast there. But that's the way it goes. I like this. And what I found out is taking a toke before a basketball game or a baseball game really helped. Like the most insane performance enhancing drug imaginable. But just a toke, not smoke. You take a toke and you get a little loosened up. You're at the plate or you take a shot. It was really a very successful thing for me. And I learned that from playing in the hood. Because the guys in the hood were smoking weed before playing basketball. I was like, I didn't know you could do that. I thought you had to like lay out in the field and listen to music or something. Like, wow. So that kind of worked for me.
So how many chapters did you have in this book?
This was a 5-chapter book.
So tell me how you wrote it.
Okay. Well, this book I wrote most of it at the Artist Cemetery in Woodstock. It's a very nice scenery, and I brought up a notebook up there. I'd pack a cooler with lunch, and I'd just start writing. I'd eat lunch, take a nice little toke or two of a joint, and just start writing, remembering stuff, and going on and on and on, and scribbling it on. Now, I wrote this in the book because, believe it or not, I wrote the entire book from notebook to Microsoft Word on this phone. I don't have a laptop. When I was writing the book, the library was closed. I couldn't use their computer because of the pandemic, so I wrote the entire book on this phone. So if an old dude can write a book on a phone using Microsoft Word on a phone with just typing, anybody can write a book. Like, I can write a book, anybody can write a book. And this book is actually selling better than I had anticipated. I kind of just put it out there. It was edited, then it had to be changed. And it probably should have been edited a second time, but it wasn't. And I just put it out there, and I got very good response. It's on Amazon. You got to be on Amazon. I'm sorry, but it's on Amazon. And this week, starting yesterday, the Kindle version is on sale for this week. I put the Kindle version this week on sale, really cheap, just to get people to read it.
What's on sale really cheap?
The Kindle version of this book.
I know, but what is it on? When I say not that, but tell me a number.
Okay, well, this book retails for $20 because it's a pretty big, thick
it's a
book.
nice book.
And that's a pretty reasonable price for that type of book. The Kindle price is $10 because you're not getting the physical book. It's just goes to your Kindle. This week it's on sale for $8. So that's not bad. This book I'm selling also in Woodstock at Headstock. Headstock is where Legends used to be.
Yeah.
It is now Headstock. Headstock has been in this town for quite a while. And it's selling pretty well in Headstock. It's an awesome store. The people are really cool who own it and who run it, and everybody who works there is very informative. And it's worth visiting if you're into this type of thing. And that's where this book is being sold in Woodstock exclusively. In New Paltz, it's being sold in Barner Books.
Let me ask you something. You said you're at Amazon. I'm in Amazon, and I'm about to pull out. When I sell my book, and I have several little bitty books, and then I've got, 2.
Oh, yeah.
And when I sell that book, I sell the book through my website and through my blogs. And people who buy that book, for some reason, they know it and they're bonded to it. And they feel like they know me, or that's the feeling I have. And when I sell a book through Amazon, somebody's flipped through and they found this thing, and then they order it, and then right away they start complaining about it. They haven't gotten it yet, but they're complaining about it. And I cannot, because of Amazon, I can't get to their website. So I have to write them snail mail and say, your book is on the way, and it's like, and if you just sell it through the website, people buy it, you ship it out, and they love it, and they buy copies for their friends or whatever. So I don't know. You probably feel much better at Headstock than you do at Amazon. Is that true?
Oh, of course. I love when people buy the book in Headstock because a lot of this book takes place in Woodstock, of course, because I live here, and I've been coming here since the 80s and whatnot. And I lived in New Paltz for almost 30 years, so a lot of the book is in New Paltz and Woodstock, which are two of the cool towns up in this area, but a lot in the Hudson Valley. So it's very relatable to a lot of people up here, and it's nice when, because it's cool when they provide something on Amazon that somebody's going to read it. That's kind of cool. It's a little impersonal, but like one of the buzzwords is Woodstock and New Paltz. So if there are people who've been here, maybe it'll bring them back to a time, like a memory. So in that respect, but it's very cool. I like that it's so, like, locally is great. It's just better. And then,
they feel an affinity for it. And the subject matter, of course, is very good for Woodstock as well. So there's this plus that goes with it. And this is amazing. This is the story that you just told of writing this thing and then putting it on your phone and just not even using the computer.
Yeah.
I have written so many books on the computer. That is, hauling that thing around. And what did you use again?
It's just Microsoft Word.
I know, but before
notebooks. I brought a notebook out. I like to sit outside and write. By the stream.
A notebook.
Just a notebook.
In 3 holes.
Yeah, a notebook. Just buy notebook.
Okay.
Fill up a bunch of notebooks.
So you wrote it in pen and paper.
Pen and paper.
On a
pencil and
spiral
paper.
note. Was it a spiral notebook?
Yep. Spiral notebook.
And you sat there in the graveyard. Now, which one?
Woodstock artist graveyard.
Okay, right.
Because it's beautiful. It's a nice scenery.
Lovely. Yeah.
And it was just and what's odd is the first book I wrote most of it in the French graveyard in New Paltz. That was from the 1700s, which was right around my apartment too. So it's just a weird thing. The books have nothing to do with graveyards or anything, but that's just kind of where they were inspired to write.
It's quiet and you're left alone. I find that finding a place where, and I know that going to the city and seeing people sitting and writing in, in coffee shops or whatever, there are people talking constantly. And at a graveyard, it's much quieter.
I guess that's what it really is, because it was nice. It was very serene, a nice atmosphere for writing. And then I just brought the phone out there. Once it was in the thing, I just, bring the phone.
Tell me about the 5 chapters.
Okay, the first chapter is called Growing Up Stoned. So it's just like, how I was introduced to marijuana and how it affected my life and joining the Navy and after. Then the second chapter is called Missing Ships Movement. And that's the chapter about the time I was in the Navy. But it's very specific about one particular, like I was talking earlier about a Mediterranean cruise.
Right.
And it goes into boot camp because people want to know how it is in Navy boot camp, which is pretty interesting. Because I went from, here I am, graduating high school, going out, I was a senior in high school, partying, whatever, and then 3 days later I was in Navy boot camp and it was like, bang, ooh, change. But that's what I wanted and it was cool. So that's the second chapter and it goes into that and like I was smuggling hashish onto the boat in different foreign countries. I was able to buy hashish and figuring out ways to smuggle it onto the boat, which is, I would never do that, but I was 18 and I kind of was not the smartest guy, but it was an adventure. And there's it goes all into it, and I wound up getting in trouble in the Navy many times. I finished my time, but I spent a lot of time in the ship's brig, and it tells you exactly life of the ship. Bread and water. They give you a bread and water sentence for 3 days for a minor offense to try to straighten you out right away. So it tells you about how those 3 days of bread and water are pretty intense. But then the next chapter after that, I get out of the Navy, and I didn't really learn a lot because I was just like a stoner, and I was a boatswain's mate. I worked on the surface of the ship, and I got out of the Navy, and fortunately I saved money to go to college, and the Navy was going to match the government would match that college fund 2-to-1 if used for college. But when I got out of the Navy, I was not ready to go to college, and I wound up, my parents had moved from New York to New Jersey, and I wound up staying with them for a while. And that chapter is called Down and Out in New Jersey, and it was during the, let's see, I got out of the Navy in 84. I was in the Navy from 80 to 84, so 84 I wound up moving into New Jersey, and it was during the cocaine era, and it goes into that kind of thing. Scarface movie came out, and everybody was doing cocaine, and it kind of goes into that a little bit, which is something I kind of stayed away from, but it's pretty intense. So that was Down and Out in New Jersey, and that was kind of like, oof, you know. Let's see, what was the next chapter? I should know it, right? Oh, then the next chapter was the London trip. That's a very good chapter. The London trip is very exciting. I met a street person from Woodstock, was my buddy in college back then. He's still a street person in Woodstock to this day. He's a homeless, lives on the street, but he's from an extremely wealthy family, and who had a palace, as he says, in London. And we took this journey to London, and that's what that chapter is about. It's very interesting, and it's pretty decadent, but it's called The London Trip, and it's about life in New Paltz as a young person in a college town, not being in college, but able to go out to the college parties every night, and that type of life, although I had to work as well. Unfortunately, my friend didn't because he was from a wealthy family. But that's a cool story. And then after that, the final chapter is called Work Sucks, and that's when I finally had to get a job for the first time, really, in many years, at the age of 40, and then it goes on, life after 40, as a stoner, moving to Woodstock. And there's a lot about Woodstock, New Paltz, different places around this area are, different things are told, and many people's stories are also told in here, in the final chapter. And then there's an epilogue which puts things in place after the writing is done. And one conclusion I came to is that plants have power over humans. Like wheat grew in one place in the Middle East only, but we liked it so much that we took it and planted it everywhere. I think marijuana does that to humans. Like, ooh, we like that. So there's more marijuana planted now than ever would be in nature, because the marijuana using us, we're using it, but it's using us to keep propagating it.
Well, you know, that's very true. That's very true of a lot of plants. Tomatoes went around the world. We have a lot of quinoa. I mean, that's very, very true.
So,
and was that something that you thought up on your own, or was that something that you read? How did you come about that?
It was kind of like I was thinking about it, and I was talking to a friend in a bar here in Woodstock, and he was telling me about the wheat, about how the wheat, you know, he's like, because this guy is a botanist and he's into this, and we were discussing that type of thing, and it hit me. I was like, wow, you know, that's what marijuana did. We like it, so we're planting it, we're growing it, and we're cultivating it.
Right.
And I just kind of made that connection, but I guess it's kind of there. You just got to see it. Plants are awesome.
Well, when you started out to write this book, did you say to yourself, this is going to be a memoir, or is this just how it grew?
Yeah. Because people were telling me they wanted, like, I would tell these little stories to people, like, when I was a bartender, you know, just to keep people, you know, they always want to know your story. People are sitting by themselves at the bar and they're bored, whatever they want. So I would keep these people entertained with these little stories. And a lot of people told me, hey, you should write a book. So I was like, oh, let me write some of it down. So I just started writing it down. Like, you know, oh, yeah, you know, I think the first chapter was the London story, because that was very fascinating of how, that whole story is just, it's ridiculous. I mean, I wound up in London with a one-way ticket and $20 in my pocket, and the person I went with, this homeless derelict in Woodstock, is still here, who's still my friend, and he's a very cool person. He's brilliant, but, you know, hard to overcome the alcohol sometimes, you know. Yeah, he's a good guy, very good guy, but he didn't make it to London, and I showed up by myself with $20 in my pocket and a one-way ticket.
And what did you do?
Fortunately, I made it to his parents' house where we were supposed to stay, and they were very kind and put me up. But I was their servant for a month.
For how long?
They said for 30 days, as long as I had on my visa. Because when I got to London in the customs office, they asked me, "You have a one-way ticket. How much money do you have on you?" I was like, $1,000. And they were like, "Okay." And you have I told them I had a place to stay. And I was here as a tourist, and she stamped my 30 days. I was like, "Thank you." I had $20 in my pocket. I couldn't even get my money converted because it was too small of an amount to get converted. I had like 18 and change.
So you showed up at this house in London.
Maida Vale, London. Very nice section of London. I knocked on the door by
And you said,
myself.
"I was supposed to be here with so-and-so, and
Well-
he didn't make it, and I've got it, and I've got one ticket I can't even get back, and I've got $20, and he's not here yet?"
I didn't have to tell him all that. All she
Well,
said,
that was enough.
I knocked on the door, and her mom was like, "Where's William?" I was like, "Well, I was hoping he was here, to tell you the truth." It was very hard to find their apartment, too, because I didn't even know, I didn't have it written down where they were. I was just going to follow him. Like, it's a ridiculous story, but I made it to their apartment. They put me up for 30 days, and I was very fortunate, and it was a great experience being in London.
And getting nice food. And
Yeah, I
having
was
a bathroom.
pretty poor when I was over there, but I was okay because I worked around. I vacuumed. I did their laundry. They had guests over. I served their food for them. And they fed me, and they had very nice wine and nice beer, and the whole London trip was a great experience. I met people at the pubs, and it was very. And I wound up making it to Amsterdam afterward, where marijuana and hashish and all that stuff was legal, even in 1987 when that occurred.
Right.
Yeah, and I made it to Amsterdam after London because when I was in London, I wound up settling I got hit on a motorcycle like a year before I went there, maybe less than a year before, and my motorcycle property damage got settled, and I was able to get the money over there. So I was able to make it like just before I was in trouble. But I believe that Bill's parents would have paid my way back, but I didn't want to ask them for that. I would have paid them back if they paid my return trip ticket. But I was able to get this motorcycle property damage, converted it in a Barclays bank, got British pounds, went to Amsterdam before going home. Because our whole trip was to go to Amsterdam too, so I still made it there. And the lady was right, I didn't need to eat 3 space cakes. 1 slice would have been enough. Because going from Amsterdam to Belgium, I got a little bit lost. But I made it back to the States, and then that's the London trip. But it goes way into more detail than that.
Do you have some wisdom to share from this book?
Wisdom to share. Yeah. It might be fun to be a stoner and all that, but if you really want to be successful in life, don't. Because it's a vice like anything else.
Don't what?
Don't partake in too much of the marijuana, because I'm like an everyday marijuana smoker for 45 years, or ingester. I bake little marijuana treats for myself and stuff because it's much healthier than smoking. But I've gotten to the point where I am like, I guess I would be addicted to marijuana, which is not the worst thing in the world, but I can't sleep unless I have a little bit of the marijuana. I can't. And it's been like that for years. I will not be able to sleep. So that's a downfall. But so what I do is I smoke a little bit every day, or I eat a little cracker, and I sleep fine. And I probably could have been intelligent and done well in school and been more successful had I, smoked a little bit less, not drank as much. It's fun, it's all fun, but when you're my age and you don't have much money and you live in a small apartment, is okay. It's perfectly fine. I have a girlfriend. I'm very lucky. Things are going well for me, and I have no complaint. But you could do better in life. You could do more. You could still smoke a little bit, but not every day. Like drinking too. Anything. I just think it's good to be clear-headed. And I really respect people who just they don't partake, or people who smoke a little bit of marijuana and they're passing there. No, not right now. I'm taking a couple days break and this and that. Everything. I don't know. I shouldn't be preaching but I think it can hold you back. It also can help you in some ways. You know, it'll make people more peaceful and more mellow. It doesn't have that negative effect. Like sometimes alcohol can give people like ear muscles or whatever, liquid courage, this and that. You know, the marijuana, it's kind of a mellow thing. It's not that bad, but it also can make you complacent and not be your best. Not be your best. Like, I don't think I was really. I'm glad I wrote books and I did things and I made something, but I think I could have been more. But I accept that, and that's the price you pay. You know. So that's my message.
That is your message.
I believe so.
Do you have another book waiting?
No, not at this time.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't. I was glad to do this. It's like,
How much time lapsed between the completion of the first book and the idea that you had a second book?
well, even before I finished the second book, I started working on this book. Because I was already onto this. Like, I was like getting into it. I was like, oh, and I was getting tired of the other one. It was like, all right, this one I want to, is like really kind of done. Like, that chapter was the 90s, and it's time to get it out there.
How many words are in this book?
Well, there's 388 pages, and I forgot the exact word count, but it's up there. I really forgot the exact word count.
Did you, when you wrote this book, when you wrote the first book, did you spend any time learning about the craft? In other words, did you spend time learning about the fonts and how many words should be in a page and how many words should be in a chapter? I mean, did you?
I really didn't.
You really did not?
I didn't. I just wrote.
Now, your son studied creative writing, correct?
Yes, that is
So
true.
did he share that knowledge with you?
No,
Tell me about that.
No, but my son crafted the first book to make it like a very nice, professional, smooth, and easy read. He's the one who turned the notebooks into a book. Like, I just gave him those notebooks, and he did that, and it flows really well. And, you know, I kind of learned from that. Like, he's his own thing. He has his own thing going on. He didn't want to be part of this book at all. He didn't want to be in it or part of it, and I understand that. Especially being like my son, the subject matter, you know, he just wasn't really about this book. So this is my project. He has his own. It was very awesome that he did the first book, like, and I learned, and I just kept the same kind of style, like my like. And I had this book edited, professionally edited, from a lady in Woodstock.
How did you find her?
Just through word of mouth, because I wound up. I turned out friends with her husband, and then wound up she's an editor, so I was able to get that done. But I don't want to discredit her, because this book was, after she edited it, I had to rewrite a lot of it. So it's not, it was more polished before. And I probably should have got it edited again, but it just read really well and it was ready to go. There's a couple minute typos, and I just was like, it's ready to go, because I just couldn't go through it again. It was ready to go.
My question is, there are so many different kinds of editors.
Yeah.
I mean, there are as many different kinds of editors as there are people in the telephone directory.
Yeah.
And so how did you even choose which kind?
Well, I talked to her about it. She was interested in it, and I sent it to her, and she's like, oh, I really like it. And she showed me, like, she sent me a cut, and I was like, oh yeah, finish it, do it. We made a deal, do it, and she did a great job. And she's the one who really told me I need to change the names. I need to like do some work on some things about it.
She really worked with you.
She did. She really did. And she really, like, it was worth it. She really made it happen. She cleaned up like the redundant sentences. I did have to touch a bunch of things up, and I even added a few things afterwards, and I was going to get it edited again. But it just got to the point where I had other things going on, and
it was just time.
It was ready for this book to go, because I would never get it done. I would keep just going over it and over it.
You can keep working on something. I know that with my first book, I got an editor. I found an editor. And we went through the whole first book. And then, I don't know, something happened. And she said, you cannot use my name on this book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's what I said. What? You know, well, you cannot use my name. And I thought, well, now wait a minute. And I paid her. And I thought, you know, if you are so unhappy with what you did that I can't even use your name, I don't think I'm going to go back to you.
Yeah.
So what I did was I went down to Gotham, and I started going down to Gotham every week in the bus. because then there were writing teachers. And so I felt like I was getting, at least I wasn't going to have somebody that was going to say, well, you can't use my name. I mean, not that I was going to, I mean, it's just so off the wall. And I didn't quite understand what the situation was, but I realized that she was very unhappy with the first book. So I don't know. And then I had very, very supportive teachers at Gotham. I only had one that was kind of a little iffy, and that was because she came in very late into it, and the book was already 3/4 done by the time, so she didn't quite, she was not, it didn't match. But so basically, you wrote 2 books on sitting on a tombstone.
Pretty much.
If you were to run across a person, say next week, a young person, or even an old person, any kind of a person, that says, I'm getting ready to write my first book, what would you say?
Just write. Just let it flow. Just write. Just write. And then you're going to have to just go. Like if you're trying to write a book, I don't know about, I don't know much about, I'm not a writer, I never educated in any way. I didn't do too great in college. I did go to, that's in this book a little bit. I did have the benefit of going to college.
How long were you in college?
For 1 year, 2 semesters.
Where did you go?
New Paltz, SUNY New Paltz.
Well,
first I went to SUNY Old Westbury for a semester. Then I went to SUNY New Paltz. I wanted to be a gym teacher. That's what I was going to school to be, like education major. But I had to work while I was in school because I had, I'm on my own. I've been on my own. So I had a 20-hour-a-week job. I made it to work every day. I worked in the cafeteria. I loved it. I got fed. It was great. I had lots of friends on campus. I played basketball. I didn't play on a sports team, but I played sports all the time at the gym, basketball, frisbee, baseball. It was great. I went to parties. I went to this. I just didn't have time for classes. That was the one thing I didn't have time for.
That was the problem I had at college.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I never had classes. What classes? I couldn't even remember what classes I was supposed to be having.
Oh, good. It's not good.
No, it is not good.
Because once you get behind, I got behind in all my classes. I just couldn't catch up. I thought I was smart enough to just be like, I can just do this. At first, I was good. I got everything down. And then I got behind in every class, and I got behind in every class.
Right. And what was more fun was the party. And I didn't even have any sports to hang in.
Well, I wasn't on a sports team or anything. I just liked to get out there.
I didn't do any sports.
I had to do that. I had to do that every day. Yeah. Well, there's many things that can distract you at college.
Well, now, do you keep a journal of any kind?
I don't.
So you're not writing. You don't have a notebook going. So now what you're doing is you've got this book in 2 really nice places. So this is a done deal.
I'm pretty happy.
Well, but the thing is, and this is how I was indoctrinated at Gotham. You are a writer. You may think of yourself as a stoner or a bartender or a father, whatever. You are a writer.
Cool. I like that.
So even though you are not writing, you are a writer. So at some point, do you see yourself picking up a spiral-bound notebook again?
Maybe, probably, at one point. Something completely different, though. Something completely different. Like, that's it. I'm done with my stories. But my stories are my stories, but it's not my story. It's just a relatable story. And the characters, it's all about the people, that I run into in the Navy, in college, in New Jersey, like wherever. It's New Woodstock,
How many
New
years
Paltz.
have you been living in Woodstock?
I've been in Woodstock just over 4 years.
Okay, and before that, how many years were you in?
New Paltz, like 27 years.
But for me, it's kind of all the same thing. You could write a book about the creatures that the characters that you have found. You could really do that.
Well, amazingly enough, a lot of these people in Woodstock that I know, like I've been coming to Woodstock since the 80s. So even though I lived in New Paltz, I've always came to Woodstock. I used to come to Woodstock to buy weed. You could always get better weed in Woodstock than you could in New Paltz regularly. It was like Woodstock was always cool. It was chill. The hippies were here. I loved Woodstock. Still love Woodstock. you know. And I love New Paltz too, and still love New Paltz. I just like those are two great towns I was lucky to be able to live in. Like I probably should have wound up in like Fort Benning, Georgia, or something. Like if I followed my straight and narrow path, that's might have how I would have wound up. But I wound up how I wound up, and I'm very happy about it.
Or be a Marine over in Pendleton. In
Yeah,
California.
well, we'll probably be long dead,
Well, you know,
something like that.
another. It's hard to say, but I just feel like that this is not the end. This isn't the beginning. The first book is the beginning, but this is not the end. You're not. I just don't see you finishing.
Oh, that's cool.
And I know I can remember the day that you told me I'm going to write another book. And the way you said that, I thought this is a new decision. You just decided this. And then I started saying some things to you, and you said to me, you said, no, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to tell anybody anything. It's going to be a big secret. So I just am curious. I just think that there's another book out there. And, you know, our time is running very, very short. We're getting short here. So what are our closing messages? Our closing message is that we're Eric S. Siegel, and you have written a book called Ramble On that's going to sell a bunch of copies, and it's going to go on YouTube. So if somebody wants to buy this book and they're on YouTube, where are they going to go?
Well, if you're not local, go to Amazon. And the easiest way to find it is to type in the full name of the book, or to type in Eric S. Siegel. I put the S in there because Eric Siegel is a very common name for writers for some reason.
Yeah, but you know what? I went to Facebook, and I went to Eric S. Siegel.
Yeah. I'm not on Facebook. I don't do any of that social media.
Oh, okay. I was going to say I saw all these pictures. Oh,
I don't do any social media at all. I'm not like, I didn't even like, I don't think I'm going to make money with this book or anything. I'm going to probably lose money. I don't care. And also, there's a copy in the library system too. I'm going to give another copy so that you don't have to buy the book. You can get it from the library system.
What library did you get?
I gave it to Woodstock Library, but I have to go to New Paltz to bring Barner Books a couple more books, and I'm going to give New Paltz system. But you can get it through the interlibrary system. So anybody who's in Hudson Valley can get the book. Just order it online at the library. It would be nice, like if you wanted to buy a copy, it would be cool. But if you read it, that's all that's important. I'd like to get this story out there, and I'm happy that people are reading it.
You've just reinforced that you're a true writer.
Thank you.
My book is Thurman Greco, and you can find all of my books at thurmangreco.com. You can find Healer's Handbook on Amazon, but it's more fun to go with thurmangreco.com. Although if you want to go to Amazon, it's there. And this one is not on Amazon. This one is on Amazon. Yep. And this is Kindle on Amazon.
Kindle or the book, either way. The book is, it's like $20. Kindle's usually 10.
Listen,
That's just
I have
how it goes.
one quick question because I know we're getting really short. Since the pandemic, how have the sales changed?
Well, I kind of, like the book came out in February, so it was winding down, and when I first came out, it did very well, and then it slowed down.
But I'm talking about, I had a feeling that once the pandemic started, everything went ebooks.
Yeah,
Everything went ebooks, which is crazy. And then I think we're coming back to paper books.
Yeah. Well, for me, I spend enough time on the phone. I don't want to read a book on the phone.
Right.
I'll read a book.
People are tired.
I buy books. I read. I'm a reader too. I read all kinds of books. I'm a reader. One day I'll come and read this book again. I didn't sit down. I've read it enough writing it, but I had never sat down and read it, but I will.
You may have a volume 2 here. So are we out of time?
All
okay.
right.
Eric Siegel, Thurman Greco, thank you so much.